What is up, Fins fans? Welcome back to the Fins Up podcast. I'm your host, Graydon. Dolphins had a very busy day today at the trade deadline. We added Denver Broncos pass rusher Bradley Chubb, as well as San Francisco running back Jeff Wilson Jr. to the team. What's this look like? What's it going to do to affect the team for the rest of the year? What was the compensation? We're going to get into it all right here. So let's jump in, first of all, with the compensation. The Dolphins traded away the 2023 first-round pick from the San Francisco 49ers, as well as a 2024 fourth-round pick, as well as Chase Edmonds for Bradley Chubb and a 2025 fifth-round pick, pending physical, which, considering he's been playing all year, I don't see any issue there. As far as the Jeff Wilson trade, Miami traded away a 2023 fifth-round pick for Jeff Wilson Jr. So what does Bradley Chubb bring to the Miami Dolphins? Bradley Chubb is currently ranked third in the NFL in pass rush win rate, putting him alongside Jalen Phillips, who's currently ranked ninth in the NFL in pass rush win rate, giving the Dolphins, alongside only the Eagles in the NFL, as having two pass rushers who rank in the top 10 for pass rush win rate. I'd like to, before we get too deep into this, I want to give a shout out first to Laremy Tunsil, second to Chris Greer. Going all the way back to the Laremy Tunsil deal, way back with the Texans, where we brought back 3 first-round picks, 2 seconds. That's what started this whole thing. So going back to 2021, when we traded away the Houston Texans first-round pick, traded back to draft Jalen Waddle, traded that 2022 first-round pick last year for Tyreek Hill. Now the 2023 first-round pick from that trade goes to Bradley Chubb. So essentially, Chris Greer took that first-round pick in 2021 and has now turned it into Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and Bradley Chubb. Chris Greer's been in his bag. You couldn't ask for a better performance from your GM. That being said, what does this look like moving forward? What does this do for the Miami Dolphins? We're going to stick to Bradley Chubb for now. We'll get to Jeff Wilson Jr. here just in a little bit. Bradley Chubb was the number 5 overall pick for Denver back in 2018. He's on the last year of his rookie contract. They did choose to take his 5th-year option, so he's currently on the books this year for $7 million in cash. Nothing crazy. The Broncos are eating $5.6 million of that in dead cap. The Dolphins are now on the line for $7 million in cap. So why was Chase Edmonds put in this deal? It's hard to tell. I have a very tough time thinking that the Broncos were like, okay, listen, we originally wanted whatever they were asking for, a first and a second or something crazy, because there was reports coming out from Schefter that originally the Broncos wanted 2 first-round picks to deal Bradley Chubb. If that's what they would have wanted, I would have been out on this trade. Bradley Chubb's a hell of a player. He ain't that good of a player for 2 firsts. That being said, what was he worth and what was the negotiation process like? We don't know. We weren't on that phone call. But I have a very tough time thinking it went, okay, fine. You give us a first, a fourth, but we want Chase Edmonds. I don't think it went that way. The Dolphins didn't have the cap space available to eat the $7 million in cap hit that Bradley Chubb was going to bring onto the team. So I'm wondering if Miami said, hey, listen, we'll give you a 4th-round pick in 2024. We need you to take Chase Edmonds' contract to get us under the cap for this deal. That's what I wonder. The cap hit for Jeff Wilson Jr. was really nowhere near that. Nothing to worry about. He's an undrafted free agent back in 2018. Didn't bring on a whole lot of money. But let's stay on Bradley Chubb here just for now. So Chubb's best season as far as a pass rusher was actually his rookie year back in 2018 when he came out and got 13 sacks. He played up and down because of injury, missed a lot of time in 2019, only had 1 sack on the season, had an okay year in 2020, had 8 sacks on the season, 0 sacks last year, again, missed a lot of time. And then he's off to a good start this year where Denver has their bye this week. So they've played all 8 games so far, and Chubb has 6 sacks, 15 hurries, 5 hits, as well as 15 tackles, 6 assists, 2 forced fumbles. He's been targeted 5 times in pass coverage for 5 receptions. Like, not really what you bring Bradley Chubb in to do. You bring him in to specifically rush the quarterback. What does this do for the Dolphins? We've talked about a lot this year on how I think one of the issues is, particularly in this Lions game, you saw us get sliced up in the first half. is they're still trying to play the same brand of defense that you were able to play when you had Byron Jones and Xavier Howard in the secondary locking these people down, and Nick Needham. You've lost. Byron Jones has been on the pup list all season. You haven't seen him. Nick Needham is out with an Achilles tear, going to miss the rest of the season. Brandon Jones went down with an ACL tear. You're not going to see him for the rest of the season. You can't afford to not adjust. The main way that Miami was getting their pass rush was through blitzing, game stunts, things of that nature, scheming up pressure, not getting it through natural pass rush. We've talked about over and over again how Jalen Phillips continues to be very close to being an extremely productive pass rusher, but is just a step late over and over and over again. That very well could end here when you add another elite pass rusher to line up across from him. And you also have a rotation with a guy like Melvin Ingram, who we've seen flash this year in and out of production. He's had 2 sacks in a game. You've seen Emmanuel Ogba, kind of a rough start to the season this year, hasn't had a whole lot of success, but you have a rotation now and a stable of these guys that you can keep fresh. And that's what you see Buffalo doing over and over again when they just seem to have depth after depth after depth. They can bring in Gregory Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, Von Miller. Being fresh is key to a good pass rush because you just need them to go out, show burst, show explosiveness, get after the quarterback on one down, particularly when you get them in third and long situations. You need to be able to get back there. That being said, what this does for the Dolphins now is you need to adjust. You don't have the elite pass coverage guys that you've had and gotten used to being able to blitz and just leave them on an island and get to the quarterback. So does Miami adjust here? Start playing more zone and get a natural pass rush with Chubb and Jalen Phillips getting to the quarterback? That's what I would think is going to happen. We won't know. Maybe we'll see some of that on Sunday. I'm sure we'll dive into it with the Bears podcast later this week, but we won't know until we get there. But I genuinely believe you've seen, was it Robert Griffin? There's been a few tweets going out today about how Dan Orlovsky sent one out too. Going into today, the Miami Dolphins weren't quite seen as Super Bowl contenders. Playoff contenders for sure. A nightmare of a team to play against on defense for sure. This may be the move that projects Miami forward to a potential Super Bowl contender. If you're going to play against the Buffalo Bills, if you're going to play against the Baltimore Ravens, the Kansas City Chiefs, you're going to need to have not just one guy, but multiple guys that can get to the quarterback with consistency. Bradley Chubb gives you that. So looking forward, what does that look like? Obviously, you just traded a first-round pick as well as a fourth round and a running back to bring in a guy. Is that just for one season? I would hope absolutely not. There's no way that Miami went out and did this with a rental. I think that a long-term contract needed to be agreed upon in principle, at least verbally, in order for this trade to be made. There's no way you bring in a guy like this, give up that kind of asset to let him come in for 8 games for the rest of the year. So how much are we going to have to pay Bradley Chubb next year? Obviously, there's no way exactly to tell. It's hard to tell. Let's looking at what does Miami's cap space situation look like in 2023 before we get into what Bradley Chubb could potentially be owed. Obviously, you spent a ton of money in the 2021-2022 offseason. You brought in Tyreek Hill. You brought in Teron Armstead. You've got some serious money that you're going to be forking out. Luckily, Tua is still on his rookie deal. Anytime you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, that's saving you a lot of money. You have Mike Gesicki, who's currently making $10 million this year. He's an upcoming free agent. Zach Sealer's an upcoming free agent. It's going to be tough to tell what that looks like going forward on what money you have available in 2023. But as of right now, the estimated cap space for the Miami Dolphins is $10.6 million. That can grow exponentially depending on what changes you make. One of the changes that I think with the season that Emmanuel Ogba is having could be, is Ogba going to be on the team after 2022? I understand that he just signed a 4-year extension last offseason. But that being said, Chris Greer, again, he's always in his bag. He really does a good job structuring these contracts in a way that leaves you an out. And the way that he did that in this case with Ogba, the out is technically in 2024 after the 2023 season. But if you wanted to get ahead of yourself, because now you brought in Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips is going to have a contract coming up soon. I wouldn't think you're getting much out of Melvin Ingram after this season, just because he is getting toward the tail end, toward the twilight of his career. I don't see him playing much later after this. We'll see where that goes. It's hard telling. If he continues to be productive the way that he has early on in this season, there's potential that he could continue to do that. Apologize, we're going to move this out since it keeps ringing. The cap hit for Emmanuel Ogbah in 2023 is $17.3 million. If you were to cut him pre-June 1st, you would eat $6 million in dead cap in 2023 and you would save $11.3 million. So there's 11.3 right there. If you wanted to release him post June 1st, you're going to eat 17 million in dead cap in 2023. You're only going to save 350 grand and you're going to eat 4 million in dead cap in 2024. Not as good of an option. So if he's going to be cut, it's going to have to be I'm looking at pre-June 1st trade. I'm messing up here. If you cut him pre-June 1st, you would eat 21 million in dead cap with a negative 3.6 million in debt in cap savings. So you're not going to be able to cut him June 1st, pre-June 1st. Post June 1st, you can do it. You're going to eat a lot of a dead cap and you're barely going to save anything. So really, unless you can find a trade partner, which honestly, pass rushers are so coveted around the NFL, it wouldn't surprise me if you could come up with a trade partner for that. But the production this year hasn't been great. I like Emmanuel Ogbah as a player. I wasn't against the contract extension when they gave it to him because when you have a productive pass rusher like Emmanuel Ogbah has been, you need to work to keep him on the team. That's one of probably the second, I would argue, most valuable position in football. Obviously, the quarterback first. The second position is the one that's going to stop the quarterback, which is your pass rushers. If you were to release him pre-June 1st in 2024, that's when you only eat 4 million in dead cap. You would save 13.8 million in cap. Post June 1st release, you're only going to eat 2 million in dead cap in 2024, 2 million in 2025 with a 15.8 million in savings. So it is possible to get him off the books. It's going to be a couple of years if you want to do it via cut. You could get that done a little bit sooner next year in 2023 if you were to do it via trade. Where else could the Dolphins potentially be looking to save cap next season? Because things are going to continue to tighten up when you continue to bring in these stars and you have to pay them. Byron Jones has not even hit the field this year. I'm starting to lean towards I don't know if I would expect to see him hit the field this year. It's starting to trend in that direction. It would not surprise me to see the Dolphins move on after the 2022 season. The potential out in his contract is indeed 2023. If they cut him pre-June 1st, the 2023 dead cap would be $14.8 million. So you're only saving $4 million. Not great. If you were to cut him post June 1st, you eat 4.7 million in dead cap in 2023, 10 million in dead cap in 2024, but you're saving $14 million. Huge savings. If you were to get him in a trade, not great savings pre-June 1st. You're still gonna eat 14.8 in dead cap. You'll save 4 million. Not great. You trade him post June 1st, 4.7 million in dead cap in 2023, 10 million in dead cap in 2024, 14.1 in savings. So there's no difference between trading him and cutting him post June 1st. You're going to save the same amount of money. He will be 31 years old in 2023, 32 years old in 2024. So we know how it is. That 30-year-old mark is right around where corners start to crest the peak of their career. And that could be part of the problem that we're seeing with Byron Jones. It's hard to tell, honestly, what the hell's going on. He was supposed to just be a simple orthopedic, arthroscopic. I'm not going to be able to get this word out of my mouth, but it's supposed to be a simple cleanup surgery on his Achilles, and it's held him out through the first 8 weeks of the season now. And again, you're just starting to lose hope that he's going to see him at all this season. The last place that I did look at to save cap is Cedric Wilson. I'm going to be honest here. Unless the Dolphins can get a trade for Cedric Wilson, there ain't much getting out of this deal. Not in 2023. Not until 2024. The doesn't matter if it's post June 1st, pre June 1st. You're gonna eat 7 million in dead cap post June 1st. You'd only save $1 million. You're gonna eat 6 million in dead cap post June 1st for $2 million in savings. Unless they can find a trade for Cedric Wilson, in which case you would only eat 1 million in dead cap. You would save $7 million next year. There's not a whole lot of cap savings available with Cedric Wilson. So what does the contract for Bradley Chubb look like? That's the whole reason we're looking at all this is now you've got another star on the team that you have to pay. He's on the last year. He's on the 5th-year option of his rookie deal. After this, you have to pay the man. Pass rushers in the NFL get paid very well. What surprises me here is he's only projected to get $13.3 million per. As we learned during the offseason, what Spot Track has, which is a great resource to use for all things cap, isn't always the most accurate prediction. What we saw for potential free agents last offseason and what was reality didn't line up a whole lot last offseason. So the good news is the cap is continuing to move forward. as far as more and more money. There's a new CBA coming up. You're about to see the cap explode here soon. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But as much as Chris Greer does a great job structuring these contracts, the flexibility is starting to get thinner and thinner by margin. So, what does this look like with Jeff Wilson Jr.? Let's jump into what he's looked like so far this season in 2022. He's actually had very quietly a very good year that I wouldn't have expected from the outside looking in until I dove into this. That being said, he's currently 14th in the league in rushing yards, which I know 14th doesn't sound like anything crazy, but you got to remember San Francisco is very much so a running back by committee scheme, and he wasn't even the starter coming into the year. You had Elijah Mitchell went down right away in week 1, and then now you brought in Christian McCaffrey, so he split reps last week against the Chiefs in that blowout, and then again this week Christian McCaffrey was that dude this week in their game. So what does Cedric Wilson bring? He's, like I said, very high in rushing yards, considering how much of a split look that he gets in that backfield. And then he's currently 7th among running backs this season with 119 rushing yards over expectation. It could turn out to be a very good pickup for the Dolphins. He hasn't had a whole lot of production in the passing game so far on the season. He's sitting at a whopping 10 receptions on 13 targets for 91 yards. No drops, which is good to see after what we've experienced so far to this point with Chase Edmonds. But as I said, he's just what's crazy to me is the big play potential. Week 1, his longest run was 5 yards. Didn't get a whole lot of carries in that game either. Week 2, longest run was 16 yards. Week 3, 37 yards. Week 4, 32 yards. Week 5, 41 yards. Week 6, not so much 9 yards. Week 7, 15 yards. And even last week against LA, where Christian McCaffrey was the dude, he still ripped off a 12-yarder. So then when you look at yards of 10 yards or more, that was the only one against LA last week. Didn't get a whole lot of snaps. Christian McCaffrey was the guy. He only saw 7 snaps in the whole game. The week before that, he only saw 11 snaps in the whole game. Out of those 11 snaps, 3 of them were carries for 10 or more yards. Only saw 8 snaps against Atlanta the week before that, nothing more than 10 yards. But against Carolina, he saw 18 snaps, 17 rushing attempts. He had 4 rushes out of 17 attempts that were for 10 yards or more. I mean, just big play after big play. There's a lot of big playability here with Cedric, or with Jeff Wilson rather. He blows up into the secondary when given the chance. So I think you give us a 1-2 duo of him and Raheem Mostert, you might be getting exactly what we were hoping for and looking to get out of Chase Edmonds. I'll be curious who they decide to use in passing situations because Jeff Wilson just hasn't been used a lot in that aspect of his career. He has 10 receptions on the year. Before that, the most he's had in a season was 13 back in 2020, and then he had 12 in his rookie year back in 2018. So he's never been used a lot in the passing game. So it'll be interesting. Is Raheem Mostert going to be the guy being used more in the passing game? It's kind of been trending that direction, but that was with how many drops Chase Edmonds had. So it'll be curious to see what direction that continues to go. That's all we have for today. He's currently averaging 5.1 yards a carry, which is by far the highest of his career. He averaged 4.8 back in 2020. As I said, he's an undrafted free agent back in 2018. Been in the NFL for a pretty decent amount of time, which just kind of seems to be the thing with San Francisco, finding these undrafted free agent running backs that find a way to fit in the league. I mean, that's how Raheem Mostert started too. So, but he's obviously very familiar with the scheme already. Going to be able to jump right in, hopefully be productive on Sunday. It's not like you have to spend a whole lot of time installing the playbook. Obviously, our playbook isn't identical to Shanahan's, but he's very familiar with the scheme, so it shouldn't be too hard to get him up to speed and get him in the game. All right, so today's podcast, just to cover the trade deadline, just to cover Bradley Chubb, Jeff Wilson, both of which are exciting. Obviously, Bradley Chubb's the superstar. That's why you give up a first-round pick. If you're trading a fifth-round pick for Jeff Wilson, it's a good quality pickup, but more of a depth guy than going to come in and expect to be a superstar right off the bat. I'm very curious to see what Bradley Chubb does on this defense, because I think there's so many plays where Jalen Phillips is a step away from getting to the quarterback. Now you have 2 guys that tend to do that. Bradley Chubb, again, Very productive ish. Like I said, he had his best year was his rookie year with 13 sacks, which is doesn't put you in the elite, but it puts you in a damn good pass rush category. I think that now if you put him alongside a guy and Jalen Phillips, who's also right there, you can't double team them both. And you also have to deal with Christian Wilkins coming up the middle. You have to deal with Emmanuel Ogba coming in and out of that lineup, Melvin Ingram, even Andrew Van Ginkel. There's a lot of different looks this Dolphins defense is going to be able to provide now. And Jerome Baker, who's been taking a lot of snaps off the edge, this might allow him to get back to playing at home at inside linebacker, even though he does do pretty good in pass rush as well. So we'll see what that opens up for the defense. We'll see if they change the scheme a little bit more to a zone look and get out of this, continue to get hammered on in the zero look when you don't have Byron Jones and Nick Needham helping you out in that coverage. That being said, I'm literally right after I finish this, I'm going to jump onto the film for the All 22. I'll get that review done. So we're going to go ahead and hammer out 2 back-to-back podcasts tonight. And then we'll join a Bears podcast, the Bears Underground, for tomorrow's show, previewing the Bears game coming up on Sunday, which will be interesting. They're now missing Roquan Smith. We got to dodge that bullet. And now the Dolphins are going to have Bradley Chubb and Jeff Wilson making their Dolphins debuts in that game. One last thing to end the show. TJ Hawkinson did go to the Vikings. I did hear that the Vikings, before they traded for Hawkinson, called the Dolphins to touch base on Mike Gesicki. They were not impressed with our asking price for Mike Gesicki, went ahead and picked up the phone and called Detroit, made a deal there instead. Obviously, Hawkinson was one of the guys that you heard me talk about that was on the list that I had interest in the Dolphins looking into. More of a scheme fit than Mike Gesicki, more of a true tight end, able to be a little bit more productive in the blocking game. Obviously, as a fan, it's very easy to fall in love with every available alleged prospect at the trade deadline. Kareem Hunt, TJ Hawkinson, Bradley Chubb. If we had our way, we'd have every one of them in a Dolphins uniform. That's just not the way it works out in reality. Again, Chris Greer's very smart in maintaining this team's flexibility, and that's going to continue to be important moving forward. Other than that, I appreciate you guys checking out the podcast. Do me a favor if you're new on the YouTube, do me a favor, subscribe, smash that like button. If you're listening, as always, on the audio platforms, do me a favor. If you like the podcast, leave it a review, be a friend, tell a friend. Other than that, I hope you guys stay safe out there. Fins up.